What happens when the past you thought you had buried walks straight back into your life, carrying the undeniable proof that your choices left scars far deeper than you ever imagined? That morning at JFK International Airport, under the harsh glow of the departure lounge lights, billionaire entrepreneur Richard Stanton's world came crashing down. He had faced hostile boardrooms, ruthless competitors, even courtroom scandals, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Richard had just stepped off his private transfer, his assistant trailing behind, phone buzzing with updates about a merger worth billions. He was dressed in his signature tailored navy suit, gold cufflinks gleaming, shoes polished so sharp they reflected the floor. Every move he made screamed control, power, success. To anyone watching, he was the picture of a man who had it all. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. Across the crowded terminal, a woman moved with quiet grace. Her presence drew eyes not because of wealth or glamour, but because of a quiet strength that seemed to radiate from her. Her skin glowed with deep brown warmth, her hair pulled back in a simple bun, her posture unshaken by the chaos around her. In one hand, she held the handle of a travel suitcase. With the other, she steadied two children, twins, a boy and a girl no older than 7. Richard's chest tightened as if the air had been punched out of him. He knew that walk. He knew the slope of her shoulders, the rhythm of her stride. Memories he had spent a decade trying to drown under women, wine, and wealth rose like ghosts he could not escape. Naomi. Naomi Johnson. The woman he had once promised forever. The woman he had left behind in a cramped apartment on the south side of Chicago while he chased his empire. She had begged him not to go, begged him not to throw away their marriage for boardrooms and bank accounts. And when she cried, swollen with their unborn children, he had walked out anyway. Now here she was. And with her, the undeniable truth. The twins clung to her side, their backpacks bouncing with every step. The boy's face was sharp, stubborn, with a defiance in his eyes Richard recognized all too well. The girl's smile, fleeting and shy, curved in the same way his did when he was a child. It was like staring into a mirror split into two small faces. Richard's legs went numb. His assistant was still talking. "Sir, we need to head to the VIP lounge. Security is waiting." But he didn't hear a word. Naomi stopped only a few feet away, the flow of travelers forcing them into the same space. For a moment, time itself seemed to stall. Her eyes lifted, locking onto his. No gasp, no tears. Just the calm fury of a woman who had raised children on her own, who had learned not to flinch when the world turned cruel. Richard opened his mouth, but no words came. His carefully rehearsed speeches, the charm that had won investors and politicians alike, gone. What could he possibly say? "I'm sorry." That felt like spitting on years of sacrifice she had endured without him. "They're mine." He didn't need to ask. Their eyes already answered. The boy stared at him with suspicion, protective of his mother. The girl tilted her head, studying him, sensing something unspoken. And Richard, who had built towers of glass and steel across the skyline of New York, who had seen his name on the covers of magazines, felt smaller than he had in his entire life. "Richard?" Naomi's voice was steady, low and firm. It was not the voice of the woman who once whispered dreams with him at night. It was the voice of someone who had buried that woman long ago. "Move! You're standing in our way!" Her words sliced through him like knives. People brushed past, unaware that the richest man in the terminal had just been reduced to rubble by a single sentence. He wanted to stop her, to explain, to beg, but his body betrayed him. He stood frozen, watching as she took her children's hands and guided them past him toward the gate. And in that moment, for the first time in his life, Richard Stanton, the man who thought money could buy him freedom from every mistake, realized there were debts no fortune could ever repay. The echo of Naomi's words followed Richard long after she passed him. "Move! You're standing in our way!" He stood there, rooted to the floor, as if the ground beneath him had turned to concrete. For a man who built empires by making split-second decisions, He suddenly couldn't even command his own feet. Passengers streamed past, wheeling bags, cradling coffee cups, rushing toward flights and reunions. No one cared that a billionaire was unraveling in public. Richard's assistant, flustered, tugged gently at his sleeve. "Sir, your flight—" But Richard waved him off with a sharp jerk of his hand. He couldn't tear his eyes away from Naomi's retreating figure. She moved with a calm authority, shepherding the twins through the crowd, her shoulders straight, her head held high. There was no hesitation in her stride, no glance backward. It was the lack of hesitation that broke him. She had loved him once with a devotion that terrified him, and when he left, part of him had expected she would crumble. Instead, she had built herself back up, stronger, harder, untouchable. The twins turned briefly as they reached the escalator. The boy narrowed his eyes as if sensing something he couldn't yet put into words. The girl's gaze lingered longer, curious, questioning. Richard's throat tightened. He wanted to call out, to claim them, to shout the truth to the entire airport. "They're mine." But the weight of his silence, of his past cowardice, pressed down on him like chains. Naomi ushered them forward without a word. The escalator carried them up, higher and higher, until they vanished into the sea of travelers. Richard finally exhaled, his body trembling. He stumbled toward a row of empty seats near the glass wall of the terminal. For once, he didn't care if anyone recognized him, didn't care about the tabloids or the stock market or the photographers who sometimes lurked in airports for celebrity sightings. His hands shook as he pressed them against his knees, his mind spinning back to the day he left. He remembered the cramped apartment in Chicago, Naomi standing in the doorway, belly swollen with twins he had never bothered to meet, her voice hoarse from pleading, her eyes red from crying. "Richard, don't do this. We can make it work. Money isn't everything." And his reply, cold, dismissive, the words of a man convinced the world owed him greatness. "You'll hold me back. I need to be free if I'm going to build what I'm destined for." Free. That was the word he used. He had told himself she'd be fine, that somehow she'd raise their children without him, that she'd forgive him when success bought them both a better future. But she hadn't waited. She hadn't forgiven. She had moved on without him, and in doing so, she had exposed his greatest lie, that he was ever truly free. "Sir," his assistant said again, softer this time, as though speaking to a broken man instead of a billionaire. Do you want me to delay your flight?" Richard straightened, smoothing his suit jacket with trembling hands. For the first time in years, the fabric felt heavy, like a costume he no longer deserved to wear. "No," he whispered, his voice raw. "Just give me a minute." He pressed his forehead against the cold glass, staring out at the runway. Planes lifted into the sky one after another, powerful engines tearing through clouds. Once that sight had filled him with pride. The endless horizon, the idea that nothing could tether him. Now it mocked him. What good was all this freedom if it only left him empty? Behind his reflection in the glass, he saw the ghost of the twins' faces. The boy's defiance, the girl's gentle curiosity. They were already etched into him, like names carved into stone. He could no longer pretend they didn't exist. Naomi's voice echoed in his mind, sharp and unwavering. "You're standing in our way." For the first time in a decade, Richard Stanton, the man who thought he controlled every move on the board, realized he had no idea what his next step would be. But one truth had settled deep into his chest, undeniable and unshakable. If he didn't find a way back into their lives, his empire, his fortune, his carefully built legacy would mean absolutely nothing. And so, as the announcement for his flight blared overhead, Richard made a silent vow. He would not let that be the last time he saw Naomi and the twins. Whatever it took, money, humility, even his pride, he would face what he once abandoned. The question was whether Naomi would ever let him close enough to try. Richard's vow burned inside him like a fever. He rose from the bench, ignoring the concerned look on his assistant's face, and followed the direction Naomi and the twins had taken. His heart pounded with each step, the sound of rolling suitcases and flight announcements blurring into white noise. For once, Richard Stanton, the untouchable billionaire, wasn't chasing profit margins or headlines. He was chasing something far more fragile: redemption. He spotted them near the boarding gate, standing in line among other travelers. Naomi knelt to adjust her daughter's backpack, brushing a stray curl from the girl's forehead. The boy tugged impatiently at her sleeve, eager to move forward. Richard's breath caught. They were ordinary moments, small, simple, yet they hit him harder than any business deal he had ever closed. These were the moments he had missed, the moments he had traded away for corner offices and champagne galas. Gathering his courage, he stepped closer. Naomi! Heads turned. Some passengers recognized him, murmuring in surprise. A few even raised phones, ready to capture the billionaire's latest scandal. But Naomi didn't flinch. She straightened slowly, her eyes locking on his. "Don't," she said, her voice a blade wrapped in velvet. "Not here." The twins looked up, confused. The boy narrowed his eyes again, protective. "Mom, who is he?" Naomi hesitated for the first time, her jaw tightening. Richard's chest clenched. This was his chance, his one chance, to admit the truth. His voice cracked. For a man whose speeches had once swayed senators and CEOs, the words now felt heavier than steel. He cleared his throat. "I'm someone who made the biggest mistake of his life." The boy frowned. The girl tilted her head, sensing more than she understood. Naomi, however, remained unmoved. "You left," she said flatly. "You don't get to rewrite that now." "I know," Richard whispered. "I can't erase it. But please, or give me a chance to be part of their lives, to make it right." His hands trembled as he gestured toward the twins. "They deserve to know the truth." Naomi's laugh was short, bitter, the sound of years of pain condensed into a single note. "The truth? Richard, the truth is I raised them without a dime from you. The truth is they don't need your fortune, your name, or your guilt. They have me, and they are more than enough." Her words cut deep, but beneath the sting was a flicker of pride. She had done it. She had raised them into strong, whole children despite him. The boarding call echoed overhead. "Final boarding for Flight 782 to Atlanta." The line moved forward. Naomi guided the twins closer to the gate. "Naomi, please," Richard said, his voice breaking now. He didn't care about the people staring, the phones recording, the whispers of, "Is that Richard Stanton crying?" He reached out, not to grab her, but as if to hold on to something already slipping away. "Just tell me their names." Naomi paused. For a heartbeat, the steel in her softened. She looked at her children, then back at him. "Their names are Marcus and Maya," she said quietly. Then her eyes hardened again. "And that's all you get." The twins tugged her hands. Together they walked toward the jet bridge, disappearing from sight. Richard stood frozen, his outstretched hands shaking. For the first time in his life, he had nothing left to say. The man who once believed money could bend the world to his will now stood powerless, watching the only people who truly mattered vanish into the sky. And as the plane lifted off minutes later, leaving streaks of white across the horizon, Richard Stanton realized the cruelest truth of all. Some fortunes can be rebuilt, but some losses, the ones that come in the form of family, never return.